Closing, a very important part of the sales process. In this section, we'll show you techniques used around the world by experts to get the client to make the final positive decision.
When we're on the road training all around the world, one of the most frequent requests we get is to offer closing advice or closing workshops. And this is what we'll look at now, but I'd like to remind you of one thing first. Without a good needs analysis, without a good product presentation, without really showing the value of the product to the customer, you can forget closing. So don't underestimate the value of the needs analysis and product presentation in the success of an appointment.
In other words, successful closing techniques and good closing in general will never save a bad appointment. However, if your appointment's going well, not knowing about closing and using bad techniques may just ruin your chances. So let's take a look at some simple techniques that are going to help you close better.
First of all, let's get back to the real basics. What you want to be watching out for throughout the whole appointment are buying signals. The customer, in what they say and how they move with their body language, may be giving you clues as to how close they are to already making a decision. Many consultants are so occupied with what they are doing, they miss these signals. They don't listen closely enough. So the very important thing to do at first is simply to listen and watch. Your customer will be giving you signs. For example, is the customer using conditionals like would, could, if, maybe? Obviously, if the customer is using words like that, there are still things that need to be decided. If the customer is saying I will and when I, then obviously this is more definite. So the first technique is a simple one. Watch out for buying signals. Watch closely how close your customer is to making a decision and react.
Secondly, every appointment needs to have a close. Always close. This means before the customer leaves, you have to ask him for a decision. May sound very simple, but it happens more often than you think. After each appointment, if the customer does not sign a contract, you should ask yourself the following question. Why did the customer not sign today? If you don't have a real answer to that question, or if you don't believe you have the true reason from the customer, then you didn't really close.
Next, let's look at a closing mentality. You know, like I said, buying signals. The customer is giving off signs of whether they're ready to sign. Well, actually, consultants do the same thing. Many consultants walk into an appointment with the attitude of, I'm sure the customer will not sign today. And this influences the consultant's body language. This influences how the consultant reacts to objections. So what we've got to look at here is a better mentality towards the appointment.
Now what this means is sometimes the consultant accepts the customer's answer or the customer's objections. This brings us to our first closing technique. It's called the assumptive close. The consultant should assume the customer is going to sign today. So ask yourself a few simple questions. Do we have the right course for the customer? Are we going to reach his goal? Are our prices fair? Is the time in which he's going to do the course fair and adequate? The answer to all these questions should be yes. So why don't we just assume that the customer is going to close? We have all the answers and we have the fitting course for the customer.
It sounds simple, but it's true. A positive attitude changes the success of an appointment. A consultant who's not confident will not close as often. So what you have to do is the following. Say to yourself, I have the best product on the market. The customer needs English. All I have to do is show the customer that this is the solution for him. Try it out. It really works. It's all about a positive attitude. For the next thing, we want to think about the kind of questions we're going to ask in the close. What we want to avoid is the following.
So are you going to do my course?
No.
Do you want to start next week?
No.
Have you chosen Wall Street Institute?
No.
Are you ready to go?
No. You know, at this stage in the appointment, we cannot risk the customer saying no. So very much as in the needs analysis, a good closing technique is simply use open questions. Make sure the customer's saying more to you than yes or no so you can find out more about what they're thinking. Let's look at the easiest example of how to do this.
So when would you like to start?
Next week?
This combines two of the things that we've spoken about before. One of them is the positive approach with the assumptive close. No maybe or possibly. Jamina just assumes Jeff is going to sign the contract today. The second thing, Jamina doesn't ask, would you like to start? She asks when you would like to start. So it's not a yes-no question, it's a more open question for the customer. Let's take a look at a couple more options.
Now we've got these two options. Which one do you like better?
I think the one that gets me to the upper intermediate level would be more interesting for me.
This is a great one. We call this the alternative close. Instead of giving one course option, which obviously can quite easily lead to a yes or no, Jamina presents two course options, 4 or 6 levels, for example, both which sound attractive. And then it's a choice between the two and not yes or no.
This is good for two reasons. First of all, the customer feels like he has a choice, and nobody likes to be bullied into making a decision. Second of all, it's not an all or nothing, a yes or no situation. The customer merely has to choose between two options. Or how about this one?
We have a special offer right now till the end of the week. Do you think you can make a decision by then?
I think so. I just need to check my agenda, but I think so.
Another good one. This is called the bonus close. Basically what we're doing is not giving the customer a choice between two courses, but restricting the time frame for the decision. So we can talk to him about, are you in a position to decide by?
Now there's one thing you have to note here that's very important. Make sure the customer accepts the full price first. Discounts and offers, they only work if the customer already feels like he's getting a good product for a good price, and then he might decide to do it now for the discount. So make sure you accept the full price and you get a feedback from the customer on the full price before you go to the discount.
Finally, let's look at one of the most powerful and important closing techniques. You know, most consultants race through the sales appointment without really asking the customer for feedback. And then they get to the end, ask one huge closing question, and are surprised that the customer just says, I need to think about it. Good salespeople do something slightly different. And this is a technique called partial closes. Instead of asking right at the end of an appointment for a close, you close all the way through. You basically close each part of the appointment rather than just having one closing question at the end.
Think about Jamina's presentation. What did she do? At the end of the needs analysis, she did a framing, and she asked the customer if he was all right with everything. What happened at the end of the method presentation? She did the same thing again. She asked him, can you imagine studying with this method? What we didn't see, she does the same thing after the entrance test. She would mention the courses and get feedback from the customer. She would mention the goals and get feedback from the customer. She would mention the times and also the prices for the courses, and once again, get a feedback from the customer. She would make sure every step that everything is okay. Finally, she may get to the payment options and would also get an okay or at least some feedback from her customer. Let's take a look at it again and see how she does it.
And what we're going to do now is put you on a test, see where you are, talk about where you want to go exactly. I'll explain a bit of the course structure to you, and then we'll take a look at different course types and pricing. Is that okay?
That sounds great.
So this whole thing basically is called blended learning, and we'll combine everything that you said you're interested in, everything that you need. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's the flexibility I absolutely need. Yeah, it sounds great.
Great. Can you imagine studying like this?
Absolutely.
So we've got 4 levels to bring you to basic speaking level intermediate, and then we've got 6 levels which would bring you a lot higher. It would be an upper intermediate level. What do you think?
Well, I think the upper intermediate level is something that I really need to have to communicate with customers, with my other colleagues.
And the time span we're looking at is 12 months versus 18 months. How do they sound?
18 months might be a bit too long for me, but the 12 months is certainly okay.
The smaller course would be 3,000, and The 18-month course, $4,500. What do you say, price-wise?
Well, I have looked at other schools and they're about the same, so I think it's okay.
All right. There are also different ways you can pay for that. We've got upfront payment or monthly payment. What would be the better solution for you?
I think the monthly payments would be a bit more convenient for me.
Imagine that. Basically, after each phase of the appointment, Jamina made sure that Jeff was okay with everything before she moved on. So all that she has to do now is remind him of that fact.
So we've established this is the right course for you, that this method would suit your needs. We've established that the timing is all right, the pricing is okay, and the payment options. So let's get you started.
Sounds good.
Now you may think this makes it sound too easy, but give it a try. If you get the customer to buy into every part of your presentation, you'll notice you get to the end and there'll be nothing left to discuss. And the next logical step will be the start of the course and doing the contract. Now, of course, in this case, Jeff was pretty ready to go and the closing question was successful. Some of you may think, that's not how it happens in real life. Well, fortunately, sometimes it does. But more often than not, the customer will not simply say yes, but instead, this will happen.
Now, which of these two courses do you like better?
Well, I do think I need this upper intermediate level, but it is pretty expensive.
The customer will come out with an objection.
But that's not a bad thing. It's important that we find out if the customer has any doubts or any objections. And this is one of the most important things about closing. Either you'll get a positive decision from the customer, or you'll hear about a doubt. If you don't hear about the doubts, if you don't give the customer the opportunity to talk to you about their doubts, they'll go home and they will never come back. Customers who walk away with objections rarely come back. And this is the most important lesson about closing. In the English language, we have a good phrase. You don't get what you don't ask for. So use these techniques, especially the always close and the partial closes. Make sure you're asking for a decision every time. Not just at the end of the appointment, but all the way through the appointment. Either you'll get your contract or you'll get an objection. And objections is what we'll look at in the next section.